Have you ever, looked at a massive ancient bridge?
Oh, like one of those imposing stone and steel ones.
Exactly. One of those structures that has just stood there for a century. Have you ever thought about how it acts?
Structurally speaking.
Right. Because it rarely happens because of, a sudden catastrophic lightning strike.
No, of course.
It happens because, for decades, water has quietly been microscopic.
Just slowly rusting the rebar from the inside out.
Exactly. And to the casual observer, the bridge looks completely invincible but structured. It died 20 years before it finally fell into...
That is a perfect analogy for what we're talking about today.
I think so, too. So welcome to the deep dive. If you're joining us today, you are someone who loves to unpack complex history. You don't just want a list of dates, right?
Right. You want the mechanics.
You want the why. And our mission today is to explore a societal collapse that operates exactly like that. We are looking at the comprehensive timeline of the first.
And it is such a massive topic.
It really is. And the overarching theme we're analyzing is how this devastating conflict didn't start with an explosive battle. There was no single declaration of war.
There was no clear starting gun.
No. It started with a slow, quiet unraveling shaped by small choices, shifting loyalties, and, well, the methodical rise of one single...
What's really fascinating here is the premise that the First Wizarding War wasn't just an event.
Right.
It was a decades-long institutional failure. So today, we're going to trace this structural rot from the incredibly quiet birth of Tom Riddle in 1926.
All the way to that sudden, eerie silence at Godric's Hollow.
Exactly. We're focusing heavily on the mechanics of how power is consolidated in the shadows.
And why rigid institutions completely fail to recognize systemic threats until the bridge is already falling.
Until it's way too late.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand the collapse, we have to start long before any curses were actually thrown in the streets.
We have to go back to the very beginning.
Right. December 31st, 1926. Wool's orphanage in... Tom Riddle's mother dies within an hour of his birth, leaving him in this heavily structured, austere, Muggle institution.
And we really need to look at the psychological profiles and the intake logs from that era.
Yeah, because Wool's is designed to manage children through, rigid routine.
Very rigid.
Mm-hmm.
But Riddle immediately starts displaying developmental markers that are completely aberrant for that kind of environment.
Yeah, the caretaker's records note an unnatural silence.
Which is strange because most children, especially infants and toddlers, in a deprived, high-stress environment like an overcrowded 1920s orphanage, they desperately seek comfort.
Right, they cry, they act out for attention.
They attempt to form attachments even with, their overworked matron.
But Riddle doesn't.
No, he is entirely content in his own isolation.
And it's not just a passive withdrawal, is it?
Not at all. The documentation we have suggests his silence actually carried a predatory weight.
Oh, wow.
He's constantly watching. He's learning the behavioral patterns, staff, and the other children.
Just analyzing them.
Exactly. And adapting his own behavior to exploit them.
And it isn't just behavioral manipulation because the magical outbursts begin. But this is where the historical record makes a really critical distinction that I think a lot of people just gloss over.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
The obscurial comparison.
Right. Usually when a magical child is raised in a hostile Muggle environment, their magic manifests as defensive, uncontrollable bursts.
Like an obscurus.
Yeah, it's chaotic. It's suppressed emotion violently lashing out. But Riddle's magic isn't
No, he isn't repressing it at all.
He is actively testing.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it fundamentally alters our understanding of his psychological base.
How so?
Well, he discovers that if another child crosses him, he can make terrible things happen to them without ever actually raising a fist.
Like the incident with the rabbit or the cave.
Exactly. He figures out how to move objects, how to manipulate animals, how to inflict pain.
And he deliberately transitions from accidental, emotion-driven magic to conscious, intentional...
Yes. He doesn't view this ability as something frightening or unnatural. He views it as proof of his inherent superiority.
He's basically building an internal framework where empathy is a weakness.
And dominance is the only currency that matters.
So he's isolated, entirely removed from wizarding society, and convinced he is like a localized god.
A very accurate description.
Then, at age 11, Dumbledore walks into his room to deliver his Hogwarts letter. Now, I've always thought about this moment as the ultimate culture clash.
It really is.
Because Dumbledore expects a confused, maybe frightened orphan who needs to be gently introduced to a wider world.
A typical Muggle-born induction.
Right. Instead, he finds a deeply territorial child who has already weaponized his abilities.
And Dumbledore's explanation of magic doesn't induce wonder in Riddle. It induces validation.
That is such a creepy detail.
Riddle literally tells Dumbledore that he already knows he's, quote, special, and he just casually admits to using his abilities to hurt people who annoy him.
Just a chilling admission.
It really is. He isn't discovering his magic. He's just discovering there's a formal name for the weapon he's been honing for years.
It's like someone finding out they've been instinctively playing chess in their head, and now someone finally handed them the physical board and the rule.
That's a great way to put it. The revelation of the wizarding world was just the acquisition of a new tool set for him.
Exactly.
Because when Dumbledore shows him controlled magic, like setting the wardrobe on fire and then repairing it, it didn't teach Riddle humility.
Not even a little bit.
It just proved to him that his internal hyper-individualistic worldview was correct all along. There was a whole society out there built on the very power he worshipped.
So what happens when you take a child who already views human beings as disposable chess pieces and drop him into an ancient institution literally designed to teach him how to wield reality-bending power?
Well, he arrives at Hogwarts in 1938.
And he's sorted into Slytherin immediately.
Immediately. And from day one, he constructs a flawless dual life. It is a masterclass in sociopathic adaptation.
Because he understands instantly that Hogwarts isn't just an educational facility, right?
Right, it's an entrenched social hierarchy.
Yeah.
And he enters this environment with zero social capital, no wealth, and a muggle name.
Which, in Slytherin at that time, is a massive disadvantage.
A huge target on his back.
Yeah.
To survive and dominate, he realizes that raw magical talent just isn't enough. He needs institutional leverage.
So he plays the game.
He plays it perfectly. To the authority figures, people like Horace Slughorn and Headmaster Dippet, he projects the image of an impoverished, brilliant, incredibly grateful prodigy.
He is composed, unfailingly polite, and super reliable.
Yes.
But I have to push back here, though. You're saying his perfect student routine was his greatest weapon.
It was a cover.
But he's simultaneously running a localized crime syndicate down in the Slytherin dungeons.
Yes, he is.
He's actively recruiting the heirs of the most powerful pure-blood family. Isn't the fact that he could dominate individuals like the Lestranges and the Rosiers families who would typically spit on a half-blood orphan? Isn't that the actual display of his power?
It's a fair point, but you have to look at how he dominated them.
Okay.
He didn't duel them in the common room to assert physical dominance. He offered them something they couldn't get from their strict aristocratic parent.
Which was?
An environment where their darkest, most cruel impulses were validated and organized.
Oh, wow.
He provided protection for the weak, intellectual stimulation for the curious, and a venue for cruelty for the sadistic.
But he could only maintain that subterranean syndicate because his public persona was bulletproof.
Exact. The professors provided his cover without even knowing it. His academic brilliance was the shield that allowed his syndicate to operate with total impunity.
Which brings us to his 5th year and the opening of the Chamber of Secrets. We all know the historical.
He finds the entrance. He commands the basilisk.
Great. Students are petrified and Myrtle Warren is killed. The school is on the verge of closing.
A complete disaster for Hogwarts.
But this is where the mechanics of his institutional manipulation become truly terrifying, because he frames Rubeus Hagrid.
And the administration's reaction to this framing is one of the most glaring examples of systemic failure in wizarding history.
It is so frustrating to read about.
Think about the forensic reality of the situation. A student is dead. The attacks have been happening for months.
Right.
And yet, the Hogwarts administration, fully backed by the ministry, just readily accepts that a third-year student with a pet acromantula is the master.
I mean, an acromantula is a giant spider. They kill with venom and pincer.
Brutal physical trauma.
Yeah, but the victims were petrified without a single scratch on them. It makes absolutely no forensic sense.
Exactly. But it made sociological sense to the administration.
Because of the bias.
Precisely. Hagrid was a half-giant. The wizarding world's deep-seated prejudice against magical creatures and non-human intelligence completely blinded them to the forensic inconsistency.
They just saw what they wanted to see.
Dippet and the ministry wanted it to be Hagrid, because Hagrid fit their preconceived notion of a brute capable of monster.
So Riddle simply served them the scapegoat their biases were already looking for.
And it worked flawlessly.
So Riddle uses the administration's own bigotry to close the investigation. And in doing so, he learns that he can commit murder, control the narrative, and face zero consequences, simply by managing the flow of information and exploiting societal prejudice.
That is infinitely more dangerous than a giant snake.
It really is.
It is the moment he transcends being just a localized threat and becomes a systemic.
And he...
Exactly. Fracture it, one must commit an act of supreme violation against the natural order, which is murder.
But the murder alone doesn't create the Horcrux, does it?
No. It merely creates the metaphysical damage, the tear. To encase that torn fragment into a physical object requires an incredibly complex, localized ritual.
So this isn't a teenager just messing around and experimenting.
This is a 16-year-old performing metaphysical surgery on his own consciousness.
It demonstrates an absolute paralyzing terror of death.
Total avoidance of mortality.
But also a total disregard for his own humanity. He places a piece of himself into a mundane diary, and outwardly, nothing changes.
No, he's still the perfect head boy.
Still getting top marks in his NEWTS, but internally he is pivoting hard. Which brings us to the reconstruction of his identity. He's been digging into his heritage, right?
Yes, his obsession with lineage drives him to uncover the truth about his parents.
He wants to know where his power comes from.
He discovers his mother, Merobe Gaunt, was part of a squalid, inbred, deeply impoverished pure bloodline.
But one that traces directly back to Salazar Slytherin.
Exactly. But the reality of his father is what really fractures his worldview.
Because Tom Riddle Sr. was a muggle.
A wealthy, arrogant muggle.
So he's sitting on this massive internal contradiction. He possesses the highest aristocratic pedigree in the wizarding world through his mother.
But he bears the name and the blood of a muggle.
Right. And his response to this contradiction is complete ideological structure.
He goes to Little Hangleton and murders his father and his muggle grandparents.
And naturally framing his uncle Morphin Gaunt.
Again, using the Ministry's prejudice. This time against the mentally unstable and the impoverished, just to escape detection.
It's the Hagrid playbook all over again.
Exactly. But the internal shift is what matters most here. He entirely rejects his muggle heritage.
He views his own name as a filthy imposition.
He does.
But notice the nuance here. He doesn't embrace pure blood supremacy because he actually cares about pure blood culture or tradition.
Oh no. He despises the Gaunts as much as he despises the Riddles.
Right. He repurposes pure blood ideology. He takes an existing societal fracture, the simmering political tensions surrounding blood purity, and he weaponizes it to fit his personal need for godhood.
It's a convenient political frame. It allows him to demand subjugation from the oldest wizarding family.
So he sheds Tom Riddle entirely and begins to conceptualize himself solely as Lord Voldemort.
And here's where it gets really interesting.
Oh, yeah. It's 1945. He graduates. Everyone expects him to walk into the Ministry of Magic and become the minister within a decade.
He has Slughorn's backing. He has the pedigree of the perfect student.
But he doesn't want to run the system. He wants to own the foundation. So he goes to Headmaster Dippet and asks to be the defense against the dark arts.
It is a brilliantly strategic request.
Why Hogwarts, though? Why not just start taking over the ministry?
Because Hogwarts is a nexus of ancient. It's a literal fortress. And most importantly, it holds a captive audience of impressionable minds.
Ah, the next generation.
If he controls the classroom, he controls the ideological development of the next generation of wizarding Britain.
But Headmaster Dippet tells him no.
Yes, Dippet cites his youth and suggests he reapply in a few years.
And Riddle just accepts it. He smiles, bows his head, and leaves. But this is the pivot point for the entire war.
It absolutely is.
This is the moment the bridge starts rough, because being told no by Dippet is the first time his charm completely failed to override institutional bureaucracy.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it's a critical boundary.
How so?
He realizes that as long as he plays within the established institutional framework, he will always be subject to the authority of lesser men.
He will always have a ceiling.
Exactly. To dismantle the system, he cannot be an employee of it. He has to step completely outside of it.
So he vanishes into what historians call the shadow. He declines all the prestigious ministry offers and takes a job at Borgin and Burke's down in Nocturne Alley.
Which shocked everyone.
Right. On the surface, this looks insane. The golden boy of Hogwarts working as a retail clerk in a dark arts pawn shop.
But sociologically and economically, Borgin and Burke's is the most important location in the wizarding world for someone with his ambitions.
Let's talk about the legal framework that allows Nocturne Alley to exist.
It's fascinating.
Why does the ministry, which heavily regulates everything from like cauldron bottom thickness to wand permit, why do they allow an entire street dedicated to dark artifacts to operate right off Diagon Alley?
It makes no sense legally speaking.
Right. It makes no sense unless the minister actually wants it there.
Precisely. It exists because the pureblood aristocracy needs a black market. They need a place to quietly liquidate or acquire illicit assets without ministry oversight.
So by working there, Voldemort places himself at the exact intersection of dark magical research and elite pureblood economics.
He is evaluating rare, dangerous artifacts by day and cultivating a network of smugglers, dark witches, and aristocratic buyers by night.
He is literally getting paid to map the underbelly of wizarding capital.
It's like a parasitic root system.
Exactly. He's quietly extending his tendrils beneath the surface of the wizarding economy, identifying who holds the wealth, who holds the dark secrets, and who can be bought.
And during this time, he encounters Hepzibah Smith.
She's an incredibly wealthy aging collector who claims descent from Helga Hufflepuff.
And using that exact same polite, deferential charm he used on Slughorn, he gets her to show him her two greatest treasures.
Hufflepuff's cup and Slytherin's lock.
For Voldemort, these are not mere historical curiosity. They are the ultimate symbols of magical authority, deeply tied to the foundational mythos of Hogwarts.
And the pattern of his methodology repeats itself flawlessly here.
It does. Hepzibah dies suddenly.
And the official ruling is accidental poisoning by her elderly house elf, Hope.
Another marginalized scapegoat.
Okay, I want to drill down on the magical forensics because it is infuriating about.
It's a massive oversight.
He steals the artifacts, murders Hepzibah, and alters Hoki's memory so the elf confesses to the crime. But why did the Department of Magical Law Enforcement just accept a confession from a confused house?
They didn't even push back.
They have legilimency, they have veritaserum. They could have easily looked into the elf's mind and seen the memory charm.
This is the core of the institutional failure. The ministry didn't use legilimency or veritaserum on Hoki because of deeply embedded systemic bias.
It always comes back to bias.
In the eyes of magical law enforcement, house elf isn't a reliable witness. They are property.
So if the property malfunctions and admits to a crime, the ministry considers the case closed.
Exactly. To dig deeper would require resources and a fundamental belief that an elf's mind is worth forensic exploration.
Which they absolutely didn't.
Voldemort knew. He banked entirely on the ministry's laziness and bigotry.
He weaponizes their bureaucracy against them. It's brilliant and it's horrifying.
And after this murder, the root system goes completely dark.
He quits Borgin and Burke's and drops off the map for over a decade.
He travels, delving into branches of magic that haven't been practiced for centuries.
And this is where the physical corruption begins, right?
Yes, he isn't just studying. He is actively dismantling his own soul. He continues to create Horcrux, utilizing the stolen founder artifacts.
Because in magical theory, the soul acts as a stabilizing anchor for the physical form.
That's right. And as he repeatedly ruptures that anchor, his biology begins to warp. The handsome, charismatic Tom Riddle literally melts away.
Replaced by something serpentine, waxy, and deeply unnatural.
He is shedding his humanity in the most literal.
But he's not doing this in total isolation, because when he finally resurfaces in the early 1970s, he isn't alone.
No. He has forged a cohesive, highly organized militia out of those early Slytherin acolytes and the international contacts he made during his travel.
He officially designates them the Death, and this is the true beginning of the first.
The mechanism of his leadership here is so vital to understand. He binds his inner circle with a dark mark.
Right, the brand on the arm.
A complex protean charm branded directly into the flesh of the forearm. But this wasn't just a symbol of loyalty. It was an encrypted, decentralized communication network.
Explain how that worked, practically speaking, in a war setting, because it sounds like a tactical nightmare for the ministry.
It was. Imagine the ministry's RR office. If they need to deploy a strike team, they have to send memos, authorize port keys, gather in the atrium, and receive a formal briefing from the head of the department.
So it takes time. Hierarchy creates friction.
Exactly. Voldemort, conversely, can press a finger to the forearm of one Death Eater, and instantly, every single marked follower across the country feels an agonizing burning sensation.
And they know immediately to apparate to his exact coordinates.
He can assemble an elite strike force in seconds, strike a target, and disperse before the ministry's red tape even allows an RR to leave their desk.
It is entirely asymmetrical warfare. And their tactics are designed to maximize psychological terror.
They aren't trying to hold territory like a traditional army.
No, they are executing targeted assassination, prominent ministry of conducting mass disappearance, and organizing unprovoked strikes on Muggle populations.
They are generating a suffocating atmosphere of ambient paranoia.
And the Ministry of Magic completely collapsed the pressure. The ministry is a reactive institution designed to prosecute individual crimes like a stolen call or an illegal.
They are entirely unequipped to fight a localized insurgent.
Minister Millicent Bagnold and the Department of Magical Law Enforcement try to combat guerrilla terrorism, official inquiries, subcommittees, standardized arrests.
Which is like trying to put out a forest fire with a water pistol.
I have to ask, though surely the Aurors realize their standard protocols are failing, why don't they adapt?
Bureaucracies are highly resistant to change, even when facing a threat. To adapt to Voldemort's tactics require dismantling their own frameworks.
Which eventually they do, right? Under Barty Crouch Sr., they authorize Auror's unforgivable curse.
But by the time they escalate to that level of brutality, the systemic rot is already too deep.
Because Voldemort has already placed Imperiist operatives inside the ministry itself.
The government is fighting a war while its own nervous comp.
This raises an important question. If the government is completely paralyzed, who is actually fighting back?
And that brings us to Albus Dumbledore and the formation of the Order of the Phoenix.
Because Dumbledore recognizes exactly what you just pointed out. The official hierarchy is compromised and too slow.
So he built a counterinsurgency. If Voldemort's network is built on fear, coercion, and the pain of the dark mark.
The Order of the Phoenix is built on absolute voluntary trust,
Shared ideological commitment, and agility. It operates as a cellular resistance network completely outside ministry jurisdiction.
So you have these two massive decentralized networks operating entirely beneath the surface of daily wizarding life. And the government is just a hollow shell caught in the crossfire.
It is a macro-level war for the structural soul of their reality.
And Voldemort is steadily gaining ground because his forces are unburdened by morality or law. He is on the verge of victory.
And then this sprawling societal conflict is suddenly derailed by one of the most obscure, unreliable branches of magic in existence.
A prophecy. It is a stunning pivot.
It changes everything.
In the winter of 1979, amidst all this structural collapse, Dumbledore holds a routine job interview at the Hogshead Inn for a new divination teacher, Sybil Trelawney.
Now, divination is widely considered by academics, including Dumbledore himself, to be highly imprecise, bordering on fraudulent.
But during this interview, Trelawney enters a genuine trance and delivers a true prophecy regarding a child born at the end of July who will have the power to vanquish the Dark Lord.
And a Death Eater spy, Severus Snape, overhears the first half of this prophecy and reports it to Voldemort.
Now let's look at the intelligence Voldemort receives. It's incredibly vague.
It notes a child born as the 7th month died to parents who have defied him 3 times.
There are actually 2 children connected to the Order who fit this exact criteria, Neville Longbottom and Harry Potter.
The irony of Voldemort's reaction here is profound, and it speaks to his core psychological weakness.
He is a master of manipulating the present. He has engineered his own immortality.
But he cannot tolerate the existence of a hypothetical variable. He views the prophecy not as a possibility, but as a direct challenge to God.
And by acting on incomplete intelligence and arbitrarily choosing to target the half-blood Potter child over the pure-blood Longbottom child,
he actively initiates the exact chain of events the prophet.
It's the ultimate Greek tragedy. By trying to eliminate the threat, he manufactures it. Because Voldemort decides to target the Potters, the Order of the Phoenix has to take extreme measures to hide them.
They don't put them in an unplottable bunker. They use a piece of magic called the Fidelius Charm.
The Fidelius Charm is a fascinating piece of magic. It doesn't physically hide a building. It conceals a secret inside a single living human.
The location of the Potter's home in Godric's Hollow is magically extracted from the fabric of reality and deposited into the consciousness of their secret keeper, Peter Pettigrew.
So what does this all mean? Let's talk about the mechanics of the Fidelius Charm because it is mind-bending.
It's like a flawless digital encryption key.
Exactly. The encryption algorithm, the magic itself, is completely unbreakable by brute force. Voldemort could walk down the street in Godric's Hollow, he could stand on the exact coordinates of their living room, and he would not be able to see, hear, or interact with the house.
The spatial geometry simply ceases to exist for anyone who hasn't been given the secret.
You could run a supercomputer against that magical encryption for 1,000 years and get nothing.
The magic is absolute, but the system has one catastrophic flaw: the human element. The entire architectural integrity of the spell relies entirely on the psychological fortitude and loyalty of the secret keeper.
If the human holding the password decides to just, write it on a sticky note and hand it to the enemy, the flawless magical encryption instantly evaporates.
And in a war defined by terror, shifting loyalties, and extreme coercion, betting the most crucial strategic asset on the unwavering loyalty of one terrified man is an incredibly dangerous gamble.
It is the ultimate vulnerability. Voldemort has spent decades perfecting the art of breaking human. He understands leverage. He understands fear.
Peter Pettigrew, who is already buckling under the ambient terror of the war, betrays the secret. He hands the encryption key directly to Voldemort.
The collapse of that trust leads to the abrupt end of the war. On Halloween night, 1981, Voldemort has the coordinates.
And notice his operational shift here.
He doesn't send a strike team of Death Eaters. He doesn't use his network.
No, he bypasses all of his layered indirect strategy. Because this prophecy represents a threat to his immortality, it is deeply personal.
He goes to Godric's Hollow alone. He intends to eliminate the infant, resolve the hypothetical threat permanently, and cement his absolute rule.
The physical confrontation is immediate. James Potter is killed.
And Lily Potter is cornered in the nursery. But here, Voldemort encounters a branch of magic he has entirely neglected in his dark, aggressive power.
He gives Lily the option to step aside, honoring a request from...
She refuses, choosing to die, shielding her son.
And that choice triggers a piece of ancient contractual magic. By sacrificing her life willingly when she had the explicit choice to survive, her blood forms an absolute magical barrier around the child.
It is a fundamental law of magical physics that Voldemort, in his sociopathic arrogance, just failed to.
When he casts the killing curse at the infant, the spell cannot penetrate the blood protection.
It rebounds.
The unexplainable happens. The child survives, marked by the event. But the curse strikes Voldemort.
His physical form, already warped and unstabilized by years of soul splitting, is violently disrupted and entirely destroyed. His remaining soul is ripped from his body.
It is an outcome that absolutely no one on either side of the conflict anticipated.
The war doesn't end with a negotiated treaty. It doesn't end with a climactic clash of Aurors and Death Eaters on a battlefield.
It ends in a fraction of a second in a quiet suburban nursery due to a highly localized magical anomaly.
It is a stunningly abrupt conclusion to a 5-decade-long campaign of meticulous structural manipulation.
And the shockwave of that moment creates instant catastrophic vacuum of power. Think about the death.
Their entire organizational structure was anchored to Voldemort's physical presence and the dark.
With him gone, the neural network of the mark goes dormant. The central node is destroyed.
The militia instantly fractures. They scatter. Some, like the Lestranges, refuse to believe he is gone and launch desperate, violent attacks to find.
But most go into hiding. And the elite aristocratic faction, the Malfoys, the Knots, they employ a deeply cynical legal strategy.
They publicly deny any ideological alignment and claim they were operating under the Imperious Curse.
Which brings us to the failure of transitional justice. The Ministry of Magic has to clean up the pieces.
They begin holding trials before the Council of Magical Law. But how do you prosecute a war where the enemy can magically hijack a person's free will?
The Imperious Curse becomes the ultimate legal loophole.
It highlights the final, lingering institutional failure. The ministry is desperate to restore economic and social stability.
They need the wealth and influence of the pureblood aristocracy to rebuild.
So when prominent, wealthy figures claim they were mind-controlled, the ministry accepts the defense with alarming frequency.
Despite a severe lack of forensic verification, it is a messy, deeply compromised form of justice.
They are trying to repair the structural collapse, but they are leaving the rusted rebar intact within the foundation.
The Order of the Phoenix steps back into the shadows. The immediate threat is gone, but the trauma of the war is baked into the very sociology of the wizarding world.
They build a new normal, but it's a normal based entirely on an app.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the lingering, unresolved uncertainty of Voldemort's actual fate becomes the new foundation of their reality.
They don't possess a body. They don't have forensic proof of his death. They just have the absence of his terror.
So we've traced this timeline from a quiet room in a Muggle orphanage to a shattered nursery in Godric's Hollow.
We've seen how one deeply observant, isolated individual systematically dismantled a society.
He didn't do it with a sudden explosion of raw power. He did it by mapping the psychological and legal gaps in their institutions.
He exploited the faculty's blind trust at Hogwarts. He weaponized the ministry's prejudice against marginalized creatures to hide his crimes.
He mapped the dark economy of Nocturnally.
And he hijacked the bureaucratic sluggishness of the government to build an empire of terror.
He weaponized the wizarding world's own systemic flaws against itself.
And that brings us to a final, vital question regarding the aftermath.
Think about the society that the surviving Potter child grows up. They built an entire era of peace and celebration, not on a definitive victory, but on a vast, unresolved mystery.
What happens to a culture that builds its foundation on the assumption that the monster is gone, simply because they can no longer see?
Do the rigid structures of institutional peace actually make a society vastly more vulnerable if the architect of that chaos ever returns?
That is a haunting question. If you assume the bridge is safe just because it didn't collapse today, you stop checking the foundation for rust. Thank you for joining us on Dive. We hope this exploration of institutional failure, magical mechanics, and the quiet consolidation of power gives you something to heavily reconsider. Keep questioning the structural integrity around you. Keep looking for the blind spot.